The massive crystalline structure of the Galactic Tourism Board stretched across 3 dimensions, its walls humming with translated conversations from 1,000 different species. Today, those harmonious sounds had turned into chaos. Administrator. Velthar, a being whose crystalline body had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, stared at the document before him with all 14 of his optical sensors. "In my 2,000 years of service," Velthar announced to the assembled board, his voice creating musical chimes in the translated atmosphere, "I have never encountered such madness." The application floated in holographic display above the central table. Earth's tourism proposal glowed with an innocent blue light that somehow made its contents even more terrifying. Board member Clicks, whose 6 eyes operated independently, had 4 focused on the document while 2 others darted nervously around the room. "Look at these statistics." Clicks's voice trembled through his translator. "Gravity at 9.8 meters per second squared. That would crush a Rigelian child instantly. Their atmospheric pressure would implode a Zentorian breathing apparatus. And they call this a temperate world, suitable for recreation." Board member Theiss, resembling a graceful tree made of flowing energy tendrils, swayed in distress. "The atmospheric composition alone violates 17 safety protocols. 21% oxygen concentration creates explosive conditions. Their nitrogen levels would cause delirium in most species, and they breathe this mixture voluntarily. There'll be Chambers' environmental systems struggle to maintain comfort for all the different species present. Some board members floated in specialized atmosphere bubbles, others required magnetic field generators, and a few existed as pure energy forms contained in crystalline matrices. Yet all of them shared the same expression of absolute horror. "Perhaps," suggested board member Corin, his methane-based form rippling with uncertainty, "this is some form of elaborate jest? A cultural misunderstanding?" Before anyone could respond, the chamber's doors dilated with a soft hiss. The human representative entered, and immediately every sensor in the room focused on her. Jimin Park walked with confident strides that demonstrated the impossible strength required to move under Earth's crushing gravity. Her environmental suit appeared almost decorative compared to the military-grade protection worn by the board members. "Honored board members," Jimin's voice carried clearly through the universal translators, "thank you for considering Earth's application for Class A tourist destination status." Velthar's crystals dimmed with confusion. "Ms. Park, surely you understand that your world is classified as a Class 2 Deathworld. Our records indicate that your planet has claimed more exploration teams than any other surveyed world in this sector." Jimin's smile brightened, which somehow made the board members even more nervous. Those early exploration incidents were simply misunderstandings. Once visitors learn proper safety procedures, Earth becomes incredibly welcoming. "Safety procedures?" Theiss's tendrils recoiled so violently that her containment field flickered. "Your safety procedures include warnings about creatures called bears that can dismember armored vehicles, weather phenomena that generate electromagnetic pulses, and plant life that secretes acids capable of dissolving starship hulls." "So you're thinking about the dangerous areas," Jimin laughed, activating her holographic presentation system. "We've prepared a comprehensive tour package that focuses on Earth's gentler attractions." The hologram filled the chamber's center, displaying scenes that made several board members activate emergency containment protocols. Humans swam alongside massive predatory fish, whose teeth gleamed like industrial cutting tools. Other humans hurled themselves from impossible heights, trusting their lives to fabric and string contraptions that would be classified as suicide devices on civilized worlds. This footage, Corin's methane form, bubbled with distress. "Shows your species engaging in activities that would be considered cruel and unusual punishment in most galactic legal systems. Extreme sports are very popular," Jimin explained cheerfully. "Skydiving, shark diving, mountain climbing, volcano hiking. We've documented everything with full safety statistics." Clicks's 6 eyes focused on different parts of the presentation simultaneously. These statistics indicate a mortality rate that would be considered genocide if inflicted by an enemy species. "The mortality rate for these activities is actually quite low," Jimin corrected. Less than 1% for most extreme sports. We've developed excellent safety equipment and training programs. The hologram shifted to show humans consuming various Earth delicacies. Board member Zix, whose crystalline form resonated with harmonic analysis, began emitting warning frequencies as his sensors detected the chemical compositions. That substance, Zix's harmonic voice, created ripples in the chamber's atmosphere, registers as a Class 7 neurotoxin, and they're consuming it for pleasure. Spicy food is a cultural staple, Jimin beamed. The capsaicin in peppers creates endorphin releases that humans find enjoyable. We have restaurants that specialize in increasingly intense experiences. Velthar's form flickered with what his species expressed as disbelief. You voluntarily consume chemical weapons for entertainment purposes? We prefer to think of it as culinary adventure. Earth's biodiversity offers experiences impossible to replicate elsewhere in the galaxy. Where else can tourists swim with apex predators in their natural habitat, climb mountains that pierce atmospheric layers, or taste flavors that trigger neurochemical responses? The chamber fell silent, except for the nervous chittering of various life support systems. Finally, Thys managed to speak. Ms. Park, with all due respect to your species' remarkable survival capabilities, how can we possibly recommend Earth as a tourist destination when your world's idea of recreation would be classified as extreme hazard survival training in most civilized systems? Jimin's smile never wavered, because that's exactly what makes it special. The transport shuttle Galactic Survey 7 descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling meteor, its shields glowing red-hot from the friction. Inspector Korth gripped his safety harness as the craft shuddered through what humans casually called weather turbulence. His specialized environmental suit, designed to protect him in the vacuum of space and toxic waste facilities, felt inadequate as the shuttle's sensors registered the hellish conditions outside. "Atmospheric entry complete," announced the ship's AI in a tone that suggested this was routine. For the inspection team huddled inside their protective gear, it felt like surviving a controlled crash. Inspector Korth had built his reputation examining tourist destinations across 17 galactic sectors. He'd walked through the crystal caves of Veltar Prime, floated in the zero-gravity gardens of Station Paradise, and even survived a guided tour of the methane geysers on Titan's sister moon. Nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for the moment. The shuttle's doors opened, and Earth's atmosphere rushed in. The radiation detectors built into his suit immediately began shrieking warnings. The blazing nuclear furnace hanging in Earth's sky, which humans had named the sun, bombarded everything with levels of energy that would sterilize most civilized worlds. His suit's cooling systems worked overtime just to keep him from overheating in the first 30 seconds. "Welcome to Earth," a cheerful voice called out in perfect galactic standard. A human male approached the inspection team with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for greeting long-lost family members. His name tag identified him as Tai-Ho Kim, licensed tour guide. What struck Korth immediately was that this human wore no protective gear whatsoever. No radiation shielding, no atmospheric filters, no temperature regulation. Just thin fabric coverings that wouldn't protect against a mild solar flare. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Tai-Ho gestured expansively at the blue sky above them. The inspection team's instruments registered electromagnetic radiation levels that would require immediate evacuation protocols on any civilized world. Perfect weather for the outdoor market. Temperatures sitting at a comfortable 25 degrees Celsius. Inspector Zalith, whose crystalline form required triple redundant cooling systems, managed a weak harmonic response. This temperature would boil Rigelian blood instantly. "Really?" Tai-Ho looked genuinely surprised. "We consider this quite pleasant. Maybe a bit warm for some people, but nothing extreme." The inspection team followed their guide along what humans called a sidewalk, a primitive transportation path, where people moved using only their own physical power. Around them, Earth's civilian population went about their daily activities in conditions that violated every safety protocol in the Galactic Tourism Handbook. Small humans, which Tai-Ho explained were called children, ran and played in the open atmosphere, Some consumed frozen water treats that registered temperatures cold enough to flash-freeze Centaurian blood. Others splashed in fountains filled with liquid that would dissolve most species' exoskeletons. The children laughed and screamed with what appeared to be joy, not terror. "Is this normal?" Inspector Korth managed, his voice distorted by his suit's emergency atmospheric processors. This is mild," Tejo laughed, the sound carrying easily through the thin atmosphere. "You should see what they do in winter. Ice skating, skiing, snowball fights, or summer activities like swimming and hiking. Kids love the outdoor adventures, Inspector." Vex, whose methane-based form required a completely isolated environment chamber, floated beside the group in obvious distress. "Your young engage in recreational activities that would be classified as survival training in most galactic military academies? Kids will be kids," Tejo shrugged. "They're naturally curious and energetic. We just make sure they stay reasonably safe while they explore and learn." The inspection team began documenting violations, but their instruments couldn't keep up with the sheer number of safety hazards. The local star's radiation, the corrosive atmosphere, the extreme temperatures, the gravitational forces that would crush most beings, the wildlife that wandered freely among the population, and the casual way humans interacted with all of these deadly elements. A group of humans jogged past, breathing the toxic atmosphere deeply and apparently enjoying the experience. Their internal body temperatures registered levels that would trigger emergency medical protocols for most species. Yet they moved with fluid grace. Their bodies somehow adapted to function in conditions that should have killed them instantly. Those individuals, Inspector Korth pointed at the joggers. Are they military personnel? Enhanced soldiers? Joggers? No, just regular people keeping fit. That group probably includes teachers, office workers, maybe a few retirees. Running is a popular hobby. The terrifying truth began to dawn on the inspection team. These weren't specially trained survival experts or genetically modified super soldiers. These were ordinary civilians living normal lives in conditions that would be classified as weapons testing environments on most civilized worlds. A small human child approached the group, apparently fascinated by the alien visitors. The child's core body temperature would have triggered emergency cooling protocols for any other species, yet she seemed comfortable and happy. "Are you robots?" the child asked, staring at their environmental suits with bright curiosity. "We are galactic tourism inspectors," Korth replied carefully, his translator working overtime to convert his nervous chittering into human comprehensible speech. "Cool. Are you here to see the animals? We have really neat animals. There's a zoo just down the street with lions and tigers and bears." Inspector Zalith's crystals dimmed with terror. Their preliminary research had identified these creatures as apex predators capable of destroying armored vehicles. "You keep such creatures in populated areas? For education and conservation," Tejo explained. "Kids love learning about wildlife. It's perfectly safe with proper barriers and trained staff." The child skipped away to rejoin her family, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just casually mentioned recreational proximity to beings that would be classified as planetary-level threats on most worlds. The inspection team exchanged glances through their protective gear, realizing they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species that had evolved to treat impossible danger as everyday normalcy, and somehow managed to thrive while doing it. The luxury cruise ship Stellar Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its hull gleaming with the finest protective materials money could buy. Inside the passenger compartments, beings from across the galaxy fidgeted nervously in their specialized life support systems. Despite 17 official safety warnings, 3 liability waivers, and a medical certification requirement, they had paid enormous sums for the chance to visit the legendary Deathworld. The first tourist group represented the galaxy's most adventurous spirits. From the Peaceful Harmony cluster came Zelnak, whose species had eliminated all forms of danger from their crystalline cities 3,000 years ago. The Veltarian delegates floated in their energy matrices, their crystal forms resonating with excited harmonics despite their obvious terror. Even a few quantum dancers had made the journey, beings of pure thought who existed as living mathematics, and found the concept of physical danger utterly fascinating. As the transport shuttle descended through Earth's savage atmosphere, the tourists clutched their safety restraints, while their guide's cheerful voice filled the cabin. "Welcome to Earth, everyone. I'm Hee-Jin Lee, and I'll be your adventure coordinator for the next 7 days. We've planned an exciting itinerary that showcases the very best of human recreational activities." Hee-Jin wore nothing more than casual clothing and a bright smile, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she was surrounded by beings in military-grade environmental suits. Her casual attitude toward the lethal environment somehow made everything more terrifying. The shuttle touched down at what the tourism brochures had described as a family-friendly animal sanctuary. Through the reinforced windows, the tourists could see primitive structures surrounded by green vegetation that their scanners identified as a complex ecosystem of competing life forms. "Today we'll start with something gentle," Hee-Jin announced, as she led the group toward a series of enclosures. Each tourist moved carefully in their protective gear, following marked pathways that had been specially reinforced to handle non-human physiology. The petting zoo. The enclosures contained creatures that made the tourists' threat assessment systems scream warnings. Fuzzy quadrupeds with razor-sharp teeth wandered freely among human children. Larger beasts with powerful limbs and crushing jaws lay casually in the artificial sunlight. Flying creatures with hooked talons perched on wooden structures, occasionally swooping down to interact with the human visitors. "These are domestic animals," Hee-Jin explained, apparently unaware that her definition of domestic would be classified as weaponized by most galactic civilizations. "They've been bred for thousands of years to be companions and helpers to humans." Zelnak watched in paralyzed fascination as human children, some barely large enough to activate his people's emergency protocols, fearlessly handled beings that his species would classify as apex predators. A small human child approached his environmental suit, leading a four-legged creature by a thin rope. "Would you like to pet Rex?" the child asked, her voice translated through the universal communication system. "He's really friendly." The creature she called Rex possessed jaws capable of crushing starship hulls and teeth designed for tearing through materials stronger than most armor plating. Yet it wagged its tail and looked up at the terrified alien with what appeared to be friendly curiosity. "It won't hurt you," the child insisted, apparently interpreting Zelnak's frozen terror as shyness. "Rex loves meeting new people. He's a good boy." The child demonstrated by placing her small hand directly on the creature's head, scratching behind its ears while it made pleased rumbling sounds. Zelnak's life signs spiked to dangerous levels as he processed the casual interaction between a fragile human child and a biological killing machine. The Veltarian crystals in the group began resonating with harmonic terror as they observed other humans engaging in what could only be described as recreational consumption of toxins. Family sat at a nearby table, consuming colorful plant matter that the alien scanners immediately identified as lethal compounds. "Those substances register as Class 7 neurotoxins," whispered Crystal Entity Zephyr, her harmonic voice barely audible through the universal translator. Hee-Jin overheard and smiled brightly. "Oh, you must be scanning the peppers. Those are Carolina Reapers, some of our spiciest varieties. The Johnson family there are pepper enthusiasts. They grow them in their garden and use them to add flavor to their cooking." Add flavor? The concept seemed to break something fundamental in the Veltarian delegation's understanding of reality. They consume chemical weapons for sensory enhancement? "Spicy food is really popular," Hee-Jin explained cheerfully. "The capsaicin triggers endorphin releases that create a natural high. Some people build up incredible tolerance levels. There are competitive eating contests where humans see who can consume the most extreme varieties." A group of human teenagers walked past, each consuming frozen water treats, while laughing and chattering among themselves. The temperatures registered by the alien sensors indicated that the frozen substances would instantly crystallize most species' internal fluids, yet the humans seemed to find them refreshing. One of the quantum dancers, existing as pure mathematical consciousness, tried to process the logical contradiction. The statistical probability of survival for most observed activities approaches 0, yet the humans demonstrate no apparent distress responses. "That's because we know what we're doing," Hyejin replied with obvious pride. "Humans have spent thousands of years learning to coexist with Earth's environment. We've developed excellent safety practices and risk management strategies." As if, to emphasize her point, a group of humans jogged past the petting zoo, breathing deeply of the corrosive atmosphere while their internal temperatures spiked to levels that would trigger emergency medical protocols for any other species. They waved cheerfully at the tour group as they passed. The afternoon continued with increasingly surreal demonstrations of human recreational activities. The tourists observed families consuming meals that registered as toxic waste, children playing games that involved hurling themselves through the air at dangerous velocities, and adults engaging in competitive activities that would be classified as gladiatorial combat on most civilized worlds. By evening, the tourist group huddled in their specially reinforced accommodations, trying to process what they had witnessed. Their suite, built to galactic safety standards, felt like a fortress compared to the thin-walled structures where humans lived their daily lives. "They treat certain death as entertainment," whispered Zelnak, his voice filled with awe and terror. "And they seem genuinely happy doing it," added the Veltarian delegate, her crystal form flickering with confused harmonics. Through their reinforced windows, they could see human families gathering for evening meals, children playing in gardens, filled with potentially lethal flora, and couples walking hand in hand through an environment that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Tomorrow promised even more extreme experiences, and despite their terror, every single tourist was eager to see what other impossible things humans considered normal fun. 3 weeks into their extended stay on Earth, the tourist groups began experiencing something unprecedented in galactic tourism history. The younger visitors, those whose species were still capable of adaptation, started showing signs of what humans called acclimatization. Their fear was slowly transforming into fascination. Crystal entity, Zeph had initially required a completely isolated environmental chamber to survive Earth's atmosphere. Her crystalline form, evolved in the sterile perfection of the Veltarian cities, had never encountered anything like Earth's chaotic weather patterns. The first thunderstorm had sent her into harmonic shock, her crystal matrix nearly shattering from the electromagnetic chaos. But now, as dark clouds gathered over the tourist facility, Zeph found herself requesting permission to experience the storm from the observation deck. Her human guide, a patient woman named Subin Cho, had developed specialized equipment that allowed different species to safely experience Earth's more extreme phenomena. The atmospheric electrical discharge creates patterns I've never encountered. Zeph's harmonic voice resonated with something approaching wonder as lightning split the sky. "In our cities, we eliminated all environmental chaos thousands of years ago. We never knew what we lost." The storm raged with the kind of violence that would be classified as a planetary disaster on most civilized worlds. Yet Zeph watched through. Her protective barriers as human children pressed their faces against windows, delighting in nature's raw power. Some humans even stood outside, allowing the water to fall directly on them while they laughed and danced. "They're not afraid," Zeph observed, her crystal form flickering with new harmonic frequencies. "They're celebrating." Subin smiled as she adjusted the atmospheric processes that allowed Zeph to safely observe the storm. "Humans learned long ago that fighting Earth's weather is pointless. We learned to dance with it instead." Meanwhile, in another section of the facility, the methane-breathing Vorthak delegate known as Flux was experiencing his own revelation. His species had evolved in the clean, efficient atmosphere of gas giant moons, where sunsets were simple, affairs of filtered starlight through manufactured atmospheres. Earth's sunsets were an assault on his sensory systems. The first evening, he had retreated to his methane-filled chamber, overwhelmed by the toxic beauty of Earth's sky. But as days passed, he began requesting longer observation periods. The Yao human staff had created a specialized viewing platform where he could safely experience the daily spectacle. Your star's radiation interacts with atmospheric particles to create these displays. Flux's translated voice bubbled with methane-filtered amazement as the sky exploded in colors that had no names in his language. The toxic compounds that would kill my kind create this beauty. Pollution, dust, water vapor, and about a dozen other things, Subin explained, adjusting the environmental controls for her diverse group of tourists. What's deadly to you creates the most beautiful sunsets for us. Earth doesn't do anything simply. The human guides had become masters of adaptive technology. Subin's team included engineers, biologists, and safety specialists who worked around the clock to create experiences that pushed the boundaries of what visiting species could survive while keeping them technically safe. Today, we're going hiking, Subin announced to a group of tourists who had graduated from the basic survival programs. The trail only goes up about 2,000 meters. The Harmony Cluster delegate Zelnak, now wearing a modified environmental suit that allowed greater mobility, processed this information with growing confidence. 2,000 meters would take them higher than the tallest structures on most civilized worlds, but after weeks of gradual exposure to Earth's challenges, he was eager to try. The secret, Subin explained as the group began their ascent along a trail that would be classified as extreme mountaineering on most planets, isn't that we're crazy. We're just used to a world that demands you grow stronger. The hiking trail. Wound through ecosystems that changed with altitude, each presenting new challenges and wonders, the tourists' modified equipment allowed them to experience reduced atmospheric pressure, temperature variations that would normally kill them, and exposure to levels of solar radiation that required careful monitoring. Young Kethvar, a silicon-based entity from the core worlds, had initially been paralyzed by Earth's biological chaos. His species lived in sterile, controlled environments where every variable was managed by quantum computers. Earth's unpredictable nature had seemed like madness. But now, as he navigated the hiking trail with careful steps, he began to understand something profound. How your species didn't just survive this world, he observed, his crystalline voice carrying new harmonics of respect. You learned to thrive because of it. Subin nodded, breathing easily at an altitude that would require emergency oxygen for most galactic species. Every challenge Earth threw at us made us adapt. We got stronger, smarter, more resilient. What looked like obstacles became opportunities. The tourists began to see humans differently. These weren't suicidal maniacs or genetically enhanced super soldiers. They were ordinary beings who had been shaped by extraordinary circumstances. Their casual attitude toward danger wasn't recklessness. It was confidence earned through millions of years of successful adaptation. Word spread throughout the galaxy with unprecedented speed. Beings who had never left their safe, controlled worlds began booking passage to Earth. Adventure tourists, thrill seekers, and even researchers studying adaptive evolution all wanted to experience the legendary Deathworld, where impossible had become routine. The tourism industry exploded as species across the galaxy sought what they started calling the Earth experience, surviving a day on humanity's Deathworld while discovering what they were truly capable of when pushed beyond their comfort zones. Transport ships arrived daily, carrying beings who had lived their entire lives in safety, but yearned to understand what humans knew instinctively, that growth only comes from facing challenges that seem impossible. Earth's human population found themselves in the unexpected role of teachers, showing the galaxy that what seemed like certain death was actually just another day of being alive on the most vital world anyone had ever discovered. The emergency alert reached Earth's orbital stations at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. The mining colony on Kepler 442b had suffered a catastrophic atmospheric processor failure during a massive stellar flare event. 12 million beings from 17 different species were trapped in conditions that would kill most galactic rescue teams. Within minutes, the Galactic Emergency Response Council had been debating rescue protocols for 6 hours when someone mentioned the humans. What had started as a tourism curiosity had evolved into something unprecedented. Earth had become the training ground For the galaxy's most extreme crisis specialists, Commander Minseo Yang received the emergency transmission while leading a routine training exercise in the Sahara Desert. Her mixed-species rescue team was practicing high-temperature operations in conditions that simulated the surface of Venus. When the call came in, her team didn't hesitate. "Prep the Storm Runner for immediate departure," Minseo ordered. Her voice calm despite the magnitude of the crisis. "Full disaster response configuration. We'll need atmospheric processors for 17 different species and enough life support for a 12 million being evacuation." The Storm Runner was humanity's latest contribution to galactic emergency response, a ship designed to operate in conditions that would destroy conventional rescue vessels. Its hull could withstand temperatures hot enough to melt most starship alloys, while its atmospheric systems could process and distribute life support for dozens of different species simultaneously. As the ship rocketed toward the outer rim, Minseo's team prepared with the casual efficiency that had made human rescue specialists legendary throughout the galaxy. Her crew included Jae-Sung Kim, a former mountain rescue specialist who had adapted his skills to zero-gravity operations, and Na-Young Lee, whose experience with underwater cave rescues had proven invaluable in navigating the complex life support systems of alien colonies. "Stellar flare intensity is off the charts," reported the ship's AI as they approached Kepler 442b. "Radiation levels would be fatal to most galactic species within 30 seconds of exposure. Atmospheric temperatures are approaching 1500 degrees Celsius." "Sounds like a typical Tuesday on Earth," Jae-Sung commented, checking his environmental suit's cooling systems. The suit was based on technology developed for exploring Earth's active volcanic regions, modified to handle the extreme conditions of space-based disasters. The rescue operation that followed would be studied in galactic military academies for centuries. While other species' rescue ships maintained safe distances and launched ineffective automated probes, the human team descended directly into the chaos. The mining colony's main habitat domes had cracked under the stellar bombardment, creating a hellscape of mixed atmospheres, radiation storms, and structural collapse that would be impossible to navigate using standard rescue protocols. But for humans trained on Earth's Deathworld, it was just another extreme environment to master. "Sector 7 has a group of crystalline entities trapped in a methane pocket," Na-Young reported, her suit's sensors cutting through the electromagnetic chaos that was blinding most galactic technology. "They'll die if the temperature rises another 50 degrees. I've got 300 aquatic species in Sector 12, Jae-Sung added. "Their breathing apparatus are failing in the toxic atmosphere mix." Minseo coordinated the rescue with the kind of calm decision-making that only comes from a lifetime of navigating impossible situations. Her team moved through conditions that registered as unsurvivable on every galactic safety protocol, yet they worked with the steady confidence of beings who had learned to thrive in Earth's constantly challenging environment. The evacuation took 18 hours. When the last transport ship departed with its cargo of rescued colonists, the human rescue team had saved over 11 million beings, while other galactic responders could only observe from safe distances and marvel at what they were witnessing. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened immediately upon the rescue fleet's return. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to understand how a species from a backwater Deathworld had accomplished what their most advanced civilizations couldn't even attempt. Earth's ambassador, Dong-Hyun Park, stood before the assembled delegates with the quiet confidence that had become humanity's trademark. His simple diplomatic robes contrasted sharply with the elaborate protective gear worn by most other delegates, but his presence commanded absolute attention. "Honored representatives," Dong-Hyun began, his voice carrying easily through the chambers, "translation systems. The question you're asking isn't how we accomplished this rescue. The question is why you couldn't." Murmurs rippled through the assembly as species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia processed the implications of his words. "Earth's greatest export isn't resources or technology," Dong-Hyun continued. "It's perspective. We don't see our world as a death world, we see it as home, a place that taught us that impossible challenges make you stronger, not weaker." He activated a holographic display showing Earth's new role in galactic society. What had begun as extreme tourism had evolved into something transformative. The Galactic Survival Academy had opened facilities across Earth's surface, from the Etio frozen peaks of the Himalayas to the crushing depths of the ocean trenches. Ayu built civilizations by eliminating challenge, Donghyun explained to the silent assembly. We built civilization by embracing it. Every natural disaster that should have destroyed us instead taught us new ways to survive. Every environmental threat that should have killed us made us stronger. The Academy's programs were unlike anything in galactic history. Young beings from species that had lived in artificial safety for thousands of years came to Earth to learn what humans considered basic life skills. They discovered that what their civilizations called impossible was what humans called Tuesday. Students learned to navigate changing weather patterns, adapt to resource scarcity, and work together in high-stress environments. They discovered that uncertainty wasn't something to be feared and controlled, but something to be danced with and mastered. Within 5 years, Earth had become the galaxy's most vital world, not because of its resources or strategic location, but because it produced beings capable of solving problems that safe, controlled civilizations couldn't even comprehend. The former Deathworld became the beating heart of galactic civilization, pumping strength and resilience to species that had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Human instructors traveled throughout the galaxy, teaching the art of thriving in uncertainty and finding opportunity in every challenge. What had started as a tourism application had become a revolution. Earth proved that sometimes the most dangerous places produce the most extraordinary people, and humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't conquest or technology. It was the courage to embrace life in all its beautiful, terrifying complexity. The galaxy learned that survival wasn't enough. To truly live, you had to be willing to risk everything for growth, just like the humans had been doing on their impossible world for millions of years. The end.